Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight I've got 5 true stories and real reports of encounters with strange beings, bizarre creatures, and unexplained encounters sent in by real people, just seeking to share their terrifying and life-changing experiences. Now, if you enjoy this kind of content without any lazy text-to-speech AI narration, then do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and then grab your boots and let's ride to Cryptid country. All right, the first email of the evening begs the question, did a man really see a skinwalker as he drove down a dark Arizona highway back in 2008? I think so. And after you hear his story, I believe that you will too.
Hello, Biker. I recently came across your channel. Now, I rarely tell this story because of what I want others to believe about me, and because it truly scares me. In fact, it scares me more than anything else in my life, more than my irrational fears, and more than any real risk. This is by far the most terrifying experience that's ever happened to me. It was back in 2008, and I was recently married. And my wife and I had driven from Las Vegas to Flagstaff, Arizona for dinner. After an evening there, we were driving back because we had no money for a hotel. I hadn't been drinking, mind you, and I was and am of stable mind. It was late and I was a bit tired, but I was young and had some coffee. It was shortly after midnight, lightly snowing. My wife was asleep next to me as I drove, and I was listening to some AM country music. I like drives like that, just to relax and think. Now, I want to be clear. I don't believe in the supernatural. Even as a Christian, I was never into the ethereal world of angels and demons and ghosts. I never felt very spiritual. But as I drove along on this empty road, I thought I heard my wife say something. I looked over at her and she was asleep. But looking through her window, I saw someone or something running next to my car. He was about the height of the truck, maybe a little taller, and he was running at full speed. He had long, dark hair and piercing eyes, and a nose like a muzzle, but to a point, like a coyote. He had on a beaded shirt with beads that made a shallow V across his chest. His arms were scrawny and his face shrunken and hairy. As he ran, he turned to me and bared his teeth. I immediately lost all breath from my lungs and was completely frozen. I gripped the wheel to control the vehicle, turning away from him and looked back. He was losing lateral distance from the car, but still keeping pace. I turned back to the road and hit the gas. I looked over again and he was gone. I looked in the rearview mirror and I could see nothing in the road, nothing ahead. So I just sat frozen, holding the wheel and speeding down that highway. I hadn't made a single noise, and my wife hadn't woken up. I didn't say anything, and I didn't stop the rest of the way home. When I got to Flagstaff, I woke my wife and we went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Even as I write this, I have a terrible feeling of dread just recalling it. I've spent tons of time in the desert and the forest, camping and hiking. I feel fine at night in a cemetery. I've seen flying objects and assumed a logical reason for them all. But I have no explanation for what happened that night. I saw that. It really happened. Maybe I fell asleep, maybe it was a dream, but I don't personally believe that for a moment. Whatever that thing was, it was really there. Years later, I recounted this story to someone who lived in the area and who was Navajo. They told me that what I saw was a skinwalker, and it made sense. Right now, I'm afraid. A grown man can be drawn close to tears from this. I don't believe in gods, and I don't believe in angels or ghosts, but now I believe in skinwalkers. Signed, Nolan.
Now, to be clear, I believe that real skinwalker sightings are extraordinarily rare. And sometimes it feels like that term just gets thrown around at anything unexplained that happens, especially in the American Southwest. But This one seems very compelling, to say the least. Thanks, Nolan, for sharing that terrifying experience with us. Now, what would you do if you saw a massive, greenish-brown, spider-like creature crawling down a tree? Would you poke at it with a stick?
Dear TB, when I was 13 years old, my friend and I were out adventuring near a big factory in our city of Des Moines, Iowa, that was surrounded by tons and tons of trees that really weren't cared for. My friend wanted to go on the tree grounds to look for lizards and cicadas, and I followed him around. We shuffled through the trees and the bushes, and after a while he said he noticed something inside a gap of the tree. So he picked up a stick to poke at the gap. I was on the other side of the tree, and all of a sudden I hear him yell, "Super huge spider!" I turned around to face the tree, and along came this massive, quick as hell, greenish brown spider, the size and morphology just like a facehugger from the alien movies, that crawled in a downward spiral down the tree. Having never witnessed anything like that in my whole life, I yelped at the sight of it and took off running just as fast as I could, my friend right behind me. After a few seconds, he says, "Wait, let's go back and get a good look at it." But there was no way in hell I'd want to go anywhere near that thing. However, after much convincing, I agreed to go back, but only if we stayed away a good distance. So we found our way back to that same tree, and, well, that cursed thing is still hanging around there, unmoving now, not even a little bit. We tried to get the best look at it as we could while trying to stay away at a safe distance. I remember that it had long legs, just like the facehugger, minus the tail. One strange thing about it was it had this white and pinkish-looking disc of flesh under its body that was wider than the body itself. My friend got a longer stick to poke at the thing and made it move a bit before it moved around to the other side of the tree where we couldn't see it anymore. We would have to get closer to the tree to see the other side of it, and, well, frankly, at that point, we were both too freaked out to do that. So instead, we just booked it out of there. Later on, we told our other friends about it, and, well, no one ever believed us. But with everything that you have reported, after I saw your channel, I thought you just might. And I wanted to share. Signed, Grayson.
Thank you, Grayson, for sharing that fascinating encounter. And yes, I believe you. There are strange creatures and beings that lurk out there that maybe we aren't supposed to see, that maybe aren't even supposed to be here. But next time, if you see one, just a word of advice. Do me a favor, don't poke at it. All right, next up, a teen girl witnesses a frightening, tall, grayish humanoid, minus a face, in the Wisconsin woods.
Dear Biker, this is a serious and honest story. My fiancée, when she was young, maybe just 13, was playing around an abandoned house near her home outside of La Crosse, Wisconsin. This house had a lot of property with woods behind it, and the house was boarded up. No one lived there, and these woods were very common for her and her friend to play in. One day, she was running around those woods, looking for her friend, and she sees something. It looks like a man shape, frail, skinny, around 6 feet tall. But the thing that was strange about this creature was that it had no eyes or mouth or any distinguishing features whatsoever, no clothes or shoes, but the exact shape of a man. It literally looked like it was wearing a gray spandex or an entire suit of gray. She came across it from a distance, and it was probably 20 to 30 feet away, and she stopped. Startled at first, but then ardently started to yell at it and say, "I see you, I see you." She started calling it her friend's name because, well, for some reason at that distance, she just assumed that her friend was somehow playing a prank. The creature continued to walk towards her, slowly and strangely, without having any expression. As it got closer, about 15 to 20 feet away, she realized now that this thing was much taller than her friend, and her friend couldn't possibly have had time to put on this costume. It was just around that time that she hears her friend, in front of the house yelling her name, looking for her. And at the time, she screamed. She screamed and started to turn around, and this thing, well, it immediately panicked and stopped going her way. It then turned around itself and ran off. This incident scared the hell out of me, thinking about what it was or what it would have done had it gotten close enough. And did it only run away because it knew that the friend was nearby and there was another witness? I have to make it clear that nobody lived in those woods. This wasn't really something that somebody would have just worn willy-nilly in this area. It sounded very much like an unidentified creature, in my opinion. To this day, she still believes it was some type of alien that just happened to know that she was alone. Thanks, Biker, for reading this. Signed, Garrett.
Thank you so much, Garrett, for sharing. I wish I had some information for you, but unfortunately, her experience leaves far more questions than answers. Next, a black-eyed, strangely dressed man vanishes in Davis Douglas Park in Vancouver, Washington.
Hello, Biker. Thanks for reading my story. I saw a black-eyed man twice in different places. Both were dressed really unconventionally. One of them gave me a dreamy, mesmerized feeling when he passed, and I knew at that moment that he wasn't human. The first encounter was about 15 years ago on a path that went around a lake and had no houses for miles. He was jogging towards me, and he wore an out-of-date looking pair of red polyester shorts with no other trimmings or pockets and a red t-shirt. He was kind of buff looking, tan, and had short black hair. But when he passed me, I saw that he had black eyes. He said hi and ran on past me. He was going in the direction of where there is nothing but fields and groves of trees. He had nothing on him, no belongings that I could tell. And when I turned around, he was simply gone. The second guy, he was even weirder. He appeared walking on the forest path of the park that I go to. He also had black hair, but it was much longer and wavy. His skin was rather pale, and he was tall and graceful. In fact, I never once heard his footfalls. He wore black pants and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves and a blue vest. I mean, who wears that style nowadays? Nobody that I see in public. He also had solid black eyes that glittered as he looked at me passing by, almost like he wanted me to see that. I didn't feel any fear, I just felt trance-like until he passed. I knew he wasn't human. A few seconds later, I turned around to see that he too had completely disappeared. I believe those woods are a portal for ghosts or fae or, well, something. Both experiences were in David Douglas Park in Vancouver, Washington. I just thought you would find these interesting. Signed, Anonymous.
Now, these don't exactly fit the usual description of BEKs or similar beings. They could have been fae. That's an interesting theory. But I wouldn't rule out interdimensional beings or even extraterrestrial creatures. But I'd love to hear what you think about these in the comments about this one. And now finally, a Kentucky farm worker encounters a small gray being while looking for hunters. After he follows it, believe it or not, things get even stranger. He writes,
Dear Biker, this incident occurred in November of 1991 near Falmouth, Kentucky. It was early afternoon and I worked on a 160-acre farm at the time. One day, while eating lunch with a friend, I was told that hunters had sneaked onto the property. I finished lunch, got my gun, and walked down to the fence row. I planned to cut into the woods and try and sneak up on them. I had been out there for around 45 minutes to an hour and was walking through the woods when suddenly something stepped out from behind a tree. I yelled out, "Friend or foe?" and I pointed my gun at it. I couldn't believe my eyes because, well, standing there in front of me and my gun was a 3.5-foot tall, unknown, gray-colored being. Suddenly, I felt the being talking to me telepathically. I had the feeling that it was a young female and that it was scared and telling me that it was planning to run up a small knoll. And then it suddenly ran up that hill. I followed it. Then there was a flash of light, and some kind of portal or door opened out of nowhere. This thing was about 4 feet wide and around 8 feet tall. There was a bright light inside, and I could see that it was filled with a being. Now it looked like it was wearing a tight-fitting black suit of some sort. And that's when suddenly, out of the corner of my left eye, I saw what looked like something running towards me. I wheeled around, and right in front of me was a lizard-like humanoid about 5 to 6 feet tall, and it held a long staff in one of its hands. The humanoid's face was more insect-like and had bright blue eyes. Again, I felt it was the small female being's father or guardian or something. At this point, and to my right, a 7 or 8 foot tall, brown, hairy, Bigfoot-like creature instantly appeared standing nearby. I didn't hear it speak, but I heard it in my head. No, don't hurt him. Just then, the lizard-looking humanoid looked right at me, and while it did, its eyes changed to yellow gold. Then I ran, and when I did, I suddenly found myself alone in the woods, and it was suddenly nighttime. I just stood there in shock for a moment, trying to collect myself, and then I slowly walked back to the farm. Once I finally arrived at the farmhouse, I found another farmhand that said that he thought I was lost as they'd been looking for me for hours. I never said anything about my encounter. It's been 32 years since the incident, and I've never experienced anything like that before or since. Signed, Michael.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your amazing story with us. Believe it or not, it isn't the strangest report I've received, but I'll admit, it's up there. That being said, I do believe it, and thanks again for trusting us with your experience. And so that's all the true cryptid encounter stories and reports that I have for you this evening. I'd love to hear what you thought about these down below, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have a strange experience or an unexplained encounter that you want to share, just send it to the email address in the description, and well, your story may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thank you so much for taking this strange ride through cryptid country with me tonight. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and well, I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.